So greetings, friends and followers. This is Nurses Talking, and I am Dale Barzi. And as always, if you like what you see and hear, subscribe, leave us a comment, and let us know what you think. On this show, we talk to nurses anywhere on the planet and at any stage in their nursing career, from students to retirees, and we talk about all the things that interest us, that challenge us, that inspire us. And today, I am very, very pleased to have Nicole Marsh. And Nicole is a registered nurse of 17 plus years and over 25 years in healthcare. Always taking great pride in the opportunity to help others, she forgot to take care of herself. As a result, life took her down an unexpected path that forced her to meet the giant called burnout. It was in 2020 that she was forced to step away from a job and career that she had dedicated her life to. In her journey of recovery, she has dedicated herself to ensure that women, nurses of all levels, and healthcare professionals learn to manage the stresses that control them and regain control of their life. She has taken her pain and found passion and purpose. And she says every woman deserves the care that she provides to others. And Nicole's experiences with burnout led her to birth Burnout to Better. As a life coach and burnout strategist, Nicole works one-on-one and in a group setting. So, Nicole, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
It's my absolute pleasure. I always want to talk to nurses. And the first thing I always want to know from nurses is why they're nurses. So why are you a nurse?
Well, nursing found me.
Okay.
It found me. I grew up in a household where I saw my mother go back to school, and she became a nurse.
Okay.
My mother-in-law was a nurse as well. My initial plan was to become a doctor.
Mm-hmm.
But when I went to school, I realized that maybe I was not ready for that.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to maintain work in a field where I felt that I was serving others. And that's what I saw growing up. And so I gave it a try and I loved it.
And I'm glad you said it found you, because I really think that in many cases that is exactly what happens.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure that we actually choose the profession. Sometimes I think maybe chooses us because what it requires of you requires that you have some special qualities. So yeah, I think so.
Right. And you said that, Dale, and you really don't know what it actually requires of you until you start doing it. Because just
Exactly.
watching it, I did not realize all that came with it until I became a nurse.
Yeah. And that is the one of the things that I want to do with this channel, because I realize that the people we serve don't really have any idea who we are.
Exactly.
And I really want to expose who we are, what we bring to the table. When we walk into your room, we didn't just bring you a pill. You brought a whole lot of other stuff with us.
Right.
That's really one of the goals of this channel, among others. But anyway, so your mother was a nurse. You said your mother-in-law is a nurse.
My mother-in-law was a nurse as well.
Mm-hmm. So you had shoes to fill. How did that challenge you?
I didn't see that as a challenge.
Okay.
Because like I said, I always I grew up in the house and I saw my mother go back to school, but prior to her going back to school being a nurse, I always saw her serving others. So it was just a part of everyday life.
Uh-huh.
And that is just what was embedded in me and what I strive to do with my own life. So I didn't find any of that a challenge.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Some people have a little bit of a challenge adjusting to it, So what areas have you worked in?
I started out as a CNA. Then when I got my nursing license, I worked in telemetry, cardiac telemetry.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Stepped down in the hospital. I worked there for several years, and then I was in a position where I was fortunate to see how healthcare was transitioning from the hospital to the community. And I have worked with a group in the hospital on that plan, and I had an opportunity to move into home health, and so that's where I was a predominantly majority part of my career in home health.
Okay, more power to you. That requires some special skills, I think. Anyway, I was saying to someone the other day, I tried home health,
Mm-hmm.
and it's one of those things that really it's either for you or it's not. I lasted one day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So more power to you. More power to you. But having worked both in institution and in home health, what are the things you'd like to see, if anything at all, you'd like to see change with nursing life, how we go about things?
I would like to see more focus on the worker. We plan so much for the care of the patient, and that is important.
Yeah.
And then, as you know, over the years, regulations have turned to focus on paperwork and numbers, right? And it takes away from the individual practitioner, which in our case is the nurse. And that is the person that makes it good for everyone else. So I think we're lacking there. I think we're lacking with focus on the individual person as opposed to applying them and inserting them with the care of the patient as well as the care of the organization.
Is this something you think that probably should start? We should start within education, nursing school?
Yes.
Because otherwise, it's not going to translate into the workplace. It's
not going to translate, and I think a good place for it to start is to embed that within our own individual selves. If we start to develop those practices for ourselves, we begin to teach others how to operate.
Exactly. And so you say that you forgot to take care of yourself, led you to burnout. So I want to ask you two things. I think I'm going to ask you, first of all, what then does self-care mean to you?
Oh, self-care means a lot to me. My peace is everything. I have learned that my peace is everything. And it means for me taking time every day for myself. I tell people all the time, we fill our calendars up with everything else that we have to do every day. But where do we fall on that calendar? So the best way to remember us is to write us in on the calendar. And that's what I do. I write me in every day on my calendar, and I have time for myself, whether it's 5 minutes, whether it's an hour, it all depends on the day. But I give myself the time that I need to feed me so that I can feed others. And that's a very important thing to say and to do, because many of us have learned, some of us the hard way, with our finances. And with your finances, they say, pay yourself first. Right.
Well, that should be the same thing that translates in how you take care of, how your day goes. Take care of you first.
Right.
Act like you're on the plane. Put the mask on you first.
Right. Right. And I think that's so important in our field too, because all day we spend a majority of our day educating our patients and teaching our families what they need to do to take care of themselves. And we often forget, I won't say never, but we often forget to just take the time and think about what is it that we need for us. So that we can continue to move forward.
I know. One nurse that I spoke to put it very, very well. And she said, if we had a patient who hadn't gone to the bathroom for the whole of our shift, we would want to know what on earth is going on.
Exactly.
And yet we didn't worry about the fact that the whole shift went by and we didn't go to the bathroom either. you know?
No, we often thought of that as a prize. Like, oh, I
Yeah.
made it the whole shift and I didn't have to stop. But
I often say, I used to say that if I ever were to start an insurance company, there are only two things I want to insure. And one is the nurse's bladder, and the
yeah,
other one is the nurse's feet.
yes,
That's
yes,
it.
yes.
Yeah. Anyway, so in tying into what you were talking about, so you talk about you what made you call your company Burnout to Better?
It came to me because I eventually had to step away from my career
Yeah.
um, because of burnout. And the burnout wasn't something that happened overnight. It was accumulation of years of effort. And I just talked about being a nurse, we do for everyone else. And then we forget to do for ourselves. Well, I had been teaching everything to everyone else. And I stopped recognizing what was going on with me.
Yes.
The things that were no longer normal began to become normal in my life.
Yeah.
I wasn't sleeping, and I just took that. Well, I'm just busy. It's okay.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't eating. I didn't have good eating habits. I was either not eating enough or overeating, depending
Mm-hmm.
on where I
Yeah.
felt in that
Mm-hmm.
stage. I started to develop aches and pains, migraine headaches, which I never had before. And I just pushed it off. It'll go away. It'll be okay. And the same thing with just general aches and pains in my body. I just started to develop different things that were changing, and I knew it wasn't right, but I overlooked them.
Yeah.
And I overlooked them so long, it got to a point where I just couldn't function. I couldn't function mentally or physically. I had developed a high level of anxiety um, and at points panic attacks. And it was a panic attack one day that really caught my attention. The first panic attack I had was in my own home. And I was just talking to my husband.
Uh-huh.
And all of a sudden, I just started crying out of nowhere. And I couldn't explain why I was crying because I had no reason in that moment to cry. Um, but then after I started crying, I started to develop the panic attack. My heart rate pounded faster. It pounded harder. I just felt it in my chest, and I was like, "Oh my gosh, what's going on here?" And my husband and I looked at each other and was like, "Well, this is not normal. We don't know what's going on, but we know it's not normal." And so that prompted me to finally go, see a
Yeah.
doctor. And
Yeah.
after they ran all their tests and everything, we came to the conclusion that something needed to change. I couldn't continue to function the way I had been functioning because it wasn't healthy.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I took that time away and stepped away. And when I took that time, I really, really got serious and was intentional about my recovery and taking care of me. And looking back on it, I realized that, Nicole, this had been going on for years and you just overlooked it.
Yeah.
And if it was going on with you, how many other women
Yeah.
experienced this?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And I began to talk to people and share my story. And they was like, well, I feel the same way at times.
Yeah.
And something in my mind was like, well, why are we making this a norm?
Yeah. Right. Right. Mm-hmm.
This should not be our norm. And I came, I did what the work I needed to do for myself, came through burnout, and I recovered. So that was the burnout to better.
Yeah.
That is how that came about. And the story is probably, not probably, but the whole premise behind it was just to not only help myself, but to help other women in the same situation that I had been in, to help them through.
Mm-hmm. 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 So I have a question because as you were telling me about it,
Mhm.
what occurred to me is that even when we start to feel these things and these
Mhm.
symptoms begin to appear and we um we begin to maybe recognize that something is wrong, but we push it. Do you think we push it so far down that the people who are around us don't even recognize it either?
I think in some cases we do. Because think about it, sometimes when you have a conversation with somebody and somebody walks into a room and say, "How are you doing today?" Our first response is, "I'm doing well. I'm okay."
Yeah.
Even if we're not okay, we've been trained
to
say that we're okay.
Yeah.
So as long as we say that we're okay, that's what they hear. But very few people actually talk to you and look at you and say, "I hear what you're saying, but I don't know what's really going on." Just because of the fast-paced society that we live in, everybody's moving.
Yeah.
I don't think it's an intentional oversight, but I do think.
Yeah, I don't think it is either. I think that those around us have the same kind of conditioning that we have had.
Yes.
And so it's kind of like expected that you're going to go especially you went and became a nurse. You're going to go the extra mile, the extra 2 miles, the extra 3 miles for Pete's sake. That's what you do, So yeah.
And it becomes your habit.
It becomes your habit. It becomes your habit. And your first thought is always of somebody else. And they come to expect that your first thought is going to be of them too.
Right.
Not maliciously, but it's just the way it is.
Yeah. And in my case, my thought was if I said no, or if I felt like I couldn't perform, that I was letting someone else down. I never thought about it as me being okay with not being able to do something. I felt I always had to perform. I always had to be available.
And our profession, this is one of the things that I find, and I don't think people do it deliberately, but we tend to guilt people into doing things. We tend to guilt our colleagues into doing things. You want somebody to work an extra shift. It's always going to be that you need somebody to do an extra shift, so you need somebody to fill in a spot. But if they say no, and typically they don't say no to your face, it's only when they're on the phone or something like that that they have the courage to say no, because face to face you've already won. It's too hard to do. And then if they say no, you come in, "Oh, please, oh." And just guilt them into doing something that really they don't really have the strength to do. They don't even have the strength to insist that it's no.
So true.
Yeah, I think we have to stop that. I don't know. I mean, given the way the nursing situation is, I don't know how we're going to stop it, because we're really so short of people.
Right.
I don't know. Anyway, that being said, you're also an entrepreneur.
I am.
Talk to me about that.
Well, when I came up with the concept of Burnout to Better, I also became a coach, a life coach, transformation coach. I'm specializing in burnout. So I started my own company doing that. And I work with women on an individual basis and a group basis, with hopes to expand into the workforce and teach these concepts in the workforce to help the companies and the employees to better understand each other. Because there is a disconnect between what the organization needs and what the employee needs.
Exactly. And particularly in healthcare, as it becomes more and more corporate, and these conglomerates are now the ones that really run healthcare. The people on the ground, the nurses, the doctors, the therapists, we're all getting lost in the shuffle. And it becomes really, really hard. And the people that we look to, the managers that we look to, who are the ones closest to us for guidance and help and relief, and they're pretty much like a sandwich as well. It's oh dear. It can be.
Yeah, and you said it, Dale, a sandwich, because I've also worked in the leadership realm, in the administration realm, and at the time, that's why I was working when I experienced
Yeah, I know what
my,
that is.
my lowest point. And a big deal of it was fighting, fighting the corporate
Hmm.
for the needs of the people.
Yeah, yeah.
And I was just in the middle and being tugged both ways.
Both ways. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Because those that you're fighting for very often don't even see your fight.
No,
Yeah.
they just see if you did what they needed or if
Mhm.
you didn't do it.
If you didn't do it. Yeah,
Mhm.
I know. I know. Been there. Been there. So I'm also collecting these words because I really, really want to know what we see in each other.
Mhm.
So I want to know, I ask people, if you had to tell me, if you had to describe for me the most essential quality of a nurse, what would it be?
Humility.
Humility.
Mhm.
Okay, I like that one.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
say humility because it's so easy for us to just talk to people and deal with people on the basis of what we know. Um, and in healthcare, it's so important to be able to step back and really see and hear the patient for what their needs are. So sometimes the questions, all the assessment questions we have to ask and
Yeah.
everything,
Yeah, I know. Nobody told you when you were coming that we were going to get all intrusive.
Right. All of them, I mean, they are very helpful and they do help with the proper care of the patient,
Yeah.
but the patient actually knows what they're experiencing and what they're going through.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we should listen more to what they're feeling, what they're experiencing, and tie it into what the actual,
Yeah.
diagnostic tests and stuff
Mm-hmm.
are
Mm-hmm.
showing
Mm-hmm.
for them. So
Yeah.
sometimes we have to take a step back and forget that we are the nurse, and yes, we went to school and we received degrees for that, but
Mm-hmm.
to listen and
Yeah. Yeah.
appreciate and respect with the patient
Yeah.
and the family.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. I hear you. So with all of that, your experience, you know, um, management, burnout, all of that, what advice would you give to someone who wants to be a nurse?
I would say really, really take some time and spend with yourself. Um, really learn what it is that you're going into and figure out if that's something that you're willing to give of yourself. Because it is something that it is a selfless act. And not only just selfless in action, but selfless in time and energy and everything else that comes with it. So I would encourage everybody to just really spend some time with yourself. And if that is something that you feel like you can do and you still want to do, then, like I said in the beginning, make some time, develop a structure for yourself to make sure that as you're giving out, that you're refilling.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah,
because
yeah.
yeah,
And recognize also that as you mentioned that what works for someone, for one person, is not going to work. It's not going to work for you.
right.
Um, there was a time when I realized I don't even know that I knew how long it had been happening, but um, I realized that I was bringing my work home.
Yes.
you know, I was bringing my work home. I had to really stop and say, listen, this is not what the people who I come home to expect. They're
Right.
looking for a whole different person. They're not looking for a nurse. They're looking for mom. They're looking for wife. They're looking for, that kind of thing. So yeah, I had to really make a conscious effort to leave that persona there. There. And to that end, I had to develop a strategy. And so I would make sure, typically, I was one of those people who never really would wear scrubs or and stuff like that in public place. So,
Mhm.
but I would get dressed at home and drive to work, and drive back home in those scrubs. I had to get to the point where I said, okay, this is not going to work. So I would leave home now in my own clothes and I would change at work. And I would change at work and drive home in my own clothes. And I got it to the point where I would even change jewelry and perfume and the whole bit, just in an effort to shed that person and leave that person there. Because I realized at the time that the whole thing was consuming me. I was like, no, no, I have to let it go.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, that's a good point. We have to leave the work at work
Yeah.
and enjoy
Yeah.
the home
And
at
that
home.
can be hard. That can
Mhm.
be hard because it's such an emotional thing you're doing at times, especially if you're a very empathetic kind of person.
Mhm.
It's something that can draw you in.
Right. And that's part of the work and taking time and spending with yourself,
Hmm.
deciding what's going to work for you, what you're willing to do, what you're not willing to do, what are the boundaries that you need to create, if you need
Hmm.
to create any
Yeah.
boundaries.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah. Indeed. Nicole, I want to thank you so very much for this conversation.
Thank you, Dale.
It's been great. It's been great talking to you. Thank you so, 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 so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
My
And thank you
pleasure.
for doing this, providing this platform. It's awesome. It's
Thank you. Thank you.